You don't understand. We're married. Not to each other, to women.
And if I was gay, I'd like to think I could do better than him.
The time has come for us to talk about the sitcom Married with Children. Though it was primarily concerned with the mating habits of heterosexuals, or lack thereof, the show touched on LGBT life now and then with surprising sensitivity. And even more surprisingly, it went so far as to air an episode featuring two married gay men, just 2 months before a real-life lawsuit kicked off the modern marriage equality movement. All aboard and welcome to Matt Baum's Culture Cruise, where we take a deep dive on LGBT themes in the entertainment we love. This month, we're heading to Chicago for, believe it or not, Married with Children, which you might not expect to be particularly gay, but it has some startling links to queer culture, marriage equality, and characters that at times display more accepting attitudes than some of the characters on The Golden Girls. Culture Cruise is made possible by everyone who pledges their support on Patreon. Folks like Samantha Owens, thanks Samantha. Head over to patreon.com/mattbaum or click the link in the description to join the folks who make the show possible. Married with Children aired for 10 years, from the late 80s to the late 90s, and was basically about a nuclear family totally unable to function in modern society. Al, the dad, is a slob who thinks he deserves everyone's respect despite doing nothing to earn it. His wife Peg is lazy, their kids are gross, and every episode is basically a reminder of what John Waters warned us about in the movie Female Trouble.
I'm worried that you work in an office, have children, celebrate wedding anniversaries. The world of heterosexual is a sick and boring life.
In the 1990 episode The Dance Show, Peg is feeling neglected, and she wants to go out.
Let's go to the movies. I know one we'd both enjoy. It's Shirley MacLaine, Glenn Close, Meryl Streep, and Sally Struthers in Woody Allen's Oh My Head.
I know that movie's made up for the show, but I can't stop thinking about how great it would be if it was real. Anyway, Al's disinterested in Peg, so she goes out dancing with her friend Marcy, played, by the way, by Amanda Bierce, an actress who later came out publicly as a lesbian. They head to a dance club that is truly bizarre. Everyone's dressed like they're at a PTA meeting, the music is like something out of the 40s, and the neon sign on the wall says 10 cents a dance? What is this place? A few months ago, I talked about how the show Kate and Allie imagined that a gay dance looked something like this, so I really have no idea what going out even was for adults in the 1980s. Anyway, Peg starts dancing with a pleasant man named Andy. If he looks familiar, that's because he's played by Sam McMurray, who's been approximately 8 billion different guest characters on various sitcoms over many decades. And not to go on too much of a tangent, but 3 years before this episode aired, he was in a short film entitled Ray's Male Heterosexual Dance Hall, which imagined that businessmen close deals while dancing romantically with each other. That short actually won an Oscar, which was presented by Pee Wee Herman, and he was attacked during the ceremony by the evil robot from RoboCop and flew to safety in the rafters of the theater, which isn't in any way relevant to this episode. I just want you to know about it so you'll have weird dreams tonight. Anyway, back to the show. Al is unconcerned that Peg has been dancing with another man. His only worry is that he can't feed himself and is starting to get hungry. But then there's a knock at the door.
I just think you ought to know that your wife has been seeing my husband.
Hey, it's Dan Castellaneta, the voice of Homer Simpson. He plays Pete, the husband of Andy, the man Peg's been dancing with. What's interesting here is that while marriage equality wasn't legally recognized anywhere in the world at this point, the show repeatedly uses the term husband to describe the couple.
You're a husband?
Yes.
You know you're a guy, right?
Yes.
Well, then we got 3 guys that won't touch my wife. What's the problem?
In 1991, there was no definitive legal status for same-sex relationships. A handful of towns offered limited recognition, but if you traveled outside of city limits, that legal recognition would likely evaporate. Many same-sex couples use terms like husband and wife even without the legal status, which often just confused heterosexuals, so it's surprisingly progressive that the show Married with Children didn't bat an eye. Al doesn't care that this guy is gay, which is nothing short of amazing given the time. In the 1980s, homophobia was TV's hackiest punchline, and Married with Children thrived on hacky jokes. In fact, here's how the show handled a gay character on an episode a year earlier.
And they wonder why we call him Queen.
Okay, 2 things. First, you don't call us queens, we call ourselves queens because we're amazing. And second, this guy's look is absolute perfection. He's doing Peach Bowser cosplay and nailing the look, so yes, Queen, obviously. Anyway, it's noteworthy that Al isn't thrown by the use of the term husband, since the world was still about a decade away from any country having full marriage equality. In fact, the year this episode aired, 1990, marked an important milestone in the fight for the freedom to marry. For literally years, queer activists have been arguing about whether they should even pursue marriage equality at all. A lot of activists thought that marriage would harm queer people. Just look at how the institution is portrayed on this show. Patriarchal, unsatisfying, anachronistic, mired in the past. Many community leaders thought that queer people could do better than marriage. But the HIV epidemic exposed a crucial lack of legal protection for LGBTQ relationships. When partners died, often they had no legal connection to each other, which left them vulnerable to predatory family or laws that penalized them for being unwed. So over time, it became clear that it was crucial to be radically critical of the institution of marriage while also recognizing the need for legal equality. That strategy started to take shape in 1989, when courts in New York and California issued rulings that same-sex couples could be recognized as families. Then in December of 1990, just 2 months after this episode aired, 3 couples applied for marriage licenses in Hawaii. And by the way, you can read their amazing personal accounts of how all that happened in my book, Defining Marriage, now available on Amazon. The Hawaii couples established the foundation for all the legal work that happened over the ensuing quarter century that led up to the Supreme Court's ruling in 2015, legalizing marriage equality nationwide. The entire legal strategy that eventually won started here. Well, not here on Married with Children, but at this particular moment in time. And this wasn't the only episode of TV grappling with the issue. A year earlier, in 1989, the Golden Girls revealed that Blanche's brother was gay. And 2 years later, in 1991, her brother decided to get married, an idea that was met with some confusion.
Oh.
In the span of just 2 years, the Golden Girls went from showing gays coming out to gays wanting their relationships recognized. Other shows did the same thing and even went further. Also in 1991, the sitcom Rock aired TV's first same-sex commitment ceremony. By the way, I've been searching for that episode everywhere and I can't find it. It must exist, so if you have a copy, please get in touch. So here we have Al, an icon of heterosexuality, and he totally doesn't care that Pete's gay. In fact, he kind of likes it. He treats Pete nicely, and he's sort of into him.
You work, you cook, and you like sports?
Yeah.
I love you.
And then Pete cooks dinner for him.
Al, you gotta help me. I want my husband back. Isn't there any way you can talk to him?
Well, I don't know, Pete. What about us?
Although this friendship seems to be predicated mostly on food, it's still a relief to see such a straight show adopt a kindly attitude towards gays. We expect a sympathetic depiction on Frasier, but it's a pleasant surprise to find it on Married with Children. There are also hints here of the character that Ed O'Neill would play many years later on Modern Family. On that show, he has a gay son, and although he's not always the most inclusive...
I mean, part of going to the gym is the locker room atmosphere. And if I'm there with a gay guy, it's just not going to be the same.
He generally does his best to be a good dad.
My son's getting married today.
In the end, Al finds Andy at the weird dance hall that is probably unlike anything that actually existed at the time, and convinces him to give his husband Pete more attention. Al's words aren't perfect, but at least he's supportive.
But you got a good man at home that any man would be proud to call his wife.
You're right, Al. And if you don't mind my saying so, you should go tell your wife you love her.
Mind your own business.
Sorry.
While the heterosexuals on the show are fundamentally incapable of relating to each other, the gays actually wind up closer together. The episode ends with the husbands reconciling, albeit off-screen, and with Al and Peg reluctantly back in each other's arms. It's a surprisingly tender moment, until it's not.
He was sexy, he was hot, he was
a homo, Peg.
Okay, so this episode might not win a GLAAD award, but remember, in 1990, a lot of TV shows were struggling to figure out how to depict queer characters. And even on shows like The Golden Girls, which is as queer-friendly as television could be, you still had characters expressing reservations about gay relationships.
Oh, look, I can accept the fact that he's gay, but why does he have to slip a ring on this guy's finger so the whole world will know?
Blanche eventually comes around after a talking to from Sophia, but Al's already way ahead of her, accepting that 2 men can be married and even helping them patch up their relationship. Oddly enough, Al Bundy comes off as more progressive on gay marriage than Blanche Devereaux, even if he doesn't quite have the terminology right.
Now you go home and tell your wife that you love her.
As we see on Modern Family, these days TV shows are far less afraid to show queer couples. Steven Universe even recently had a same-sex wedding, but in 1990, the idea that two men could call each other husbands was, to many people, novel and strange. Some shows responded to that idea with bigotry or cheap jokes, but others decided that was something that should be totally normal. And it's amazing that Married with Children, of all shows, was among them. Land ho, we're pulling into port. Thanks for cruising along with us, and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks to folks like Samantha Owens who make Culture Cruise possible. There's some lovely rewards for Patreon backers. Head over to patreon.com/mattbaum or click the link in the description to check out some of those rewards. And now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to reimagine this entire episode, but with apes.
He was sexy, he was hot, he was
He was a homo, Peg!